Good morning, good perhaps afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining our stream today. Today we're going to talk about log4shell, and if you haven't heard of it, I suggest you climb out of the rock because it is, I think, for 2021, one of the biggest pieces of vulnerability news we've seen. So as usual, we've got Matt and Ryan with us, and we're just going to kind of um, shoot the shit a little bit. I think we can say that on stream, right? That's fine. So we're gonna shoot the
I
shit a
get
little bit, but we also want to
I get
highlight some of
billed.
the.
I get billed per. I just want you to know Tim Choquette keeps an eye out and sends me a
Uh oh.
physical bill for those.
Well,
So
I
keep them
I said
down.
it. It's
So
okay. It's
okay,
okay.
all right, I'll proxy that
Um,
to you.
so yeah, and one of the good things that came out of this was it's transparency, right? And we're finally seeing transparency when these things happen. So that's really cool. So let's dive right in. And Matt, tell us what log4shell is, because I think that's an important detail here.
Yeah, so it's a vulnerability in a little application. So log4shell is a Java logging, log4j is a Java logging project that almost everyone uses, right? So it's the back end for logging, for doing what the right thing is from a defensibility perspective, right? Like for actually saying, okay, I'm going to gather these logs. Great, good on you. So for everyone that has it, great. For those that did not do that, they may not have that, right? So we're good. No, but log4shell took advantage of this vulnerability where if you wrote the right syntax into any log, anything consuming by Java that's going to get logged into log4shell or log4j, it would execute that. So it was an arbitrary code, remote code execution that could allow you to get a shell, right? So you could just say, hey, remote TCP connection host, to this and get a shell and bring it in. Now I have a foothold, and I probably have a foothold as something administrative or the web host or whatever the Java applet was running under for that log4shell. So it was huge. But on a CVSS, which is a common I think it's common vulnerability scoring system. Correct me if I'm wrong. But on the CVSS score, it's 0 to 10, and a 10 means really, really easy to do, very widely available, huge impact, huge capabilities. Right? It's like a Fujitsu scale, right? No, it's not Fujitsu. What is it? I'm so stupid. The point is,
uh,
Fujima.
yeah.
Yeah. Anyways, doesn't matter.
I mean, for
I'm sorry.
tornadoes,
Yeah, that's what I was
whatever
going
it is,
after.
the F
Thank you.
scale.
Appreciate it. The F scale. Thank you for making me sound even dumber. I could have just
I,
distilled it.
I'm just glad you didn't say Richter scale. I was waiting for that one.
Yeah. No. And it might be just presciently because of the tornado conversation recently. But as a CVSS of 10, and I really think this should be an 11, right? Because it literally is not only just a 10, but like you see people demonstrating it by executing it in Minecraft. Right? By
Right.
like writing something in a Minecraft Java running machine that was vulnerable to this. Now you have remote code execution
Literally in the
capabilities.
chat. Like,
Yeah.
just
Just
dropping a
typing it
chat
in the
message.
chat gets logged.
Right.
Yeah, it's ridiculous, right? And so the nomenclatural aspects and syntax aspect of this made this so widely doable that when I read it first, it said interacting with any service. Like, holy Jesus, what do you mean you can do this over
Like,
any
guys, we
protocol? Yeah.
log everything, right? Like,
Yeah.
if you run a web application, even if
Ugh.
you, let's say you install Apache, right? We can break out of the Java bubble for a second. You install Apache by default, it is logging requests through a logging engine to a log, right? So even if you don't do anything, you're capturing a lot of log data. And the interesting about this vulnerability is it will parse certain things you log through, and it's a variable manipulation, right? Which is cool. You just did the $sign in the bracket. It's looking for a variable, which is a very powerful tool. And I actually used it when I used to launch a bunch of Nginx and Apache services to do things like date time or remote IP or things like that. But what this is doing is taking advantage of Junti, right? Which is a Java function or capability. I'm not a Java guy, so I'm going to screw up the words here,
Yep.
but that says, hey, go look this up for me, right? So that you can get your data. And then it looks like the attack uses LDAP primarily, right? So we say, go call this LDAP server, which is already weird, right? Because why are we doing that? But go call this LDAP server and learn more about this. And the learn more about this is a payload.
Or a
So
reference to
it's
the payload, right? Now it says, hey, go here for this third stage part of the payload, right? So it's
right.
yeah.
Right.
So
So I want to talk about some of this transparency. And Eric, you made a really good point, right? And it was around for months. And I think one of the key things is a lot of 0 days are around for months, years. Look at Eternal Blue back in the WannaCry days, right? Now that's probably a different story because it was 3 letters and those kind of things. But
and I'm still
that
waiting on
exploit was around for a while.
mine. I put mine in when Dom 2 months
Oh,
ago.
that
when
Intune one, yeah.
Yeah. I'm still waiting
It
on
takes
some of that.
time, right?
Yeah, it
So,
does. It does.
and no disrespect to the Apache Software Foundation. They're great. They make a huge number of widely used code bases, but it's a nonprofit foundation, right? There's only so many people that they have to take bug requests. There's only so many people they have to review PRs before they get pushed and test them. So occasionally something's going to slip through, right? And I think it's one of the few pitfalls of open source is that can happen, right? And I'm not anti-open source by any means. Anytime
I will say
something,
the
it's
many
all open
eyes
source.
theory, in my opinion, is horseshit.
Oh, for sure.
That's
You need to
another one.
have.
Sorry, that's one on me. Yeah, but no, seriously, because many eyes assumes that you're just taking time to go and look at this code and fix it and find these things, and it's just not
Yep.
usually the way I would think it works in day-to-day production, unless you just maybe I'm a bad person, but
I think
probably
you
wouldn't
need to
take the time.
have, like, if I'm an Apache Software Foundation or something like that, right? You need to have, and it could be hard to fund this, by the way. So again, no disrespect, but you need to have a team of people that do that test and review PRs for security vulns. And this one even is a little out there. It's like a variable parsing. We use variables, so it's tough, but definitely having someone who's responsible and then also taking advantage of the many eyes.
Well,
right?
no, but pause. The other side. Let's just go back to actually the topic, right? So we're talking. I want to get back to transparency in a second, but I want to talk about this.
Yeah.
You know what the greatest part about working somewhere where they already had the prescience to be able to rewind and look at history, where there is a seam, there is a third-party SOC analysis, everything's logged, everything's stored, everything can be looked at. The beauty of that is that you have defensibility. We go right back into my talk track of defensibility. The first thing that company can do is go look at the logs over the last 6 weeks or 6 months or 2 years or whatever the retention space is for their definition, right? And go say, was I actually compromised by this? Do I have other things to deal with? Do I have incidents I need to deal with? Or they can go, I don't have any of that stuff. I wonder, or do I just not even wonder? Right. So this is going to be like SolarWinds in some ways, where we're going to see fallout from this on people with less capacitance over the next time period. I don't even want to define time period. Short, long, I don't know. Right. But I think what we're going to find is this is a great example of the haves and have-nots. Right.
Well, and the difference with SolarWinds, that was a concentrated supply chain attack, and it was really good.
Sure.
Obviously, but
and this is
interesting.
Yeah.
Right. This is a module that you use when you develop an application. Right. So there's so many products that use log4j just as because they're written in Java. Right.
And sometimes they're not even on the recipe menu for the consumer using that service. Right. That's the other side of this. There is no like recipe and ingredients. I was talking about this with James Azar. Right. There's just no software bill of goods. Right. Yeah. That's very well done in a lot of cases. So.
Right.
Yeah. Sorry.
Well, let's dive into transparency. So we've got two really good examples here. Oh, and let me shout out to Eric again. I was talking about just the Apache Software Foundation, Eric. So for things like Tomcat and the Groovy framework language, whatever it is, basically, they developed that. Obviously not the Apache web server, but
but they did the log4j,
the foundation.
Yeah, for that foundation.
Right. But we got two great examples. We got one really MSP centric example, and then one that I actually found that I really like because it's from an industry that you literally never see. I've never seen this, right? You normally only hear about it after the ransomware. But Matt and Ryan, let's start with ConnectWise, right? Because they did a fantastic job. It was very quick. I subscribed to ConnectWise emails in my inbox.
I'm in the Trust Center as well.
And I very quickly got the first update, and I've received a few since, and their Trust Centers were really well updated.
They were concise. They didn't actually say anything they didn't know. Like I actually would give them, and I like to be just who I am. I don't really get, but I'm harsh too, is what I'm trying to say in a nice way. But I want to say in this one, I was very, very happy with that. In fact, I thought it was actually kind of the model for this. As they knew more, they shared it. They were transparent. You actually watched the maturity of the message grow as they started to say this system, not that system. We still have this system. We don't have that system. And I think there's an OPSEC conversation to have there, obviously. But damn it, as a security professional, I want to know where my risk is. Right. And they did a great job of doing that. And so well,
and even the first update, because
fantastic.
ConnectWise has such a broad range of products and tools and stuff. Like their first update was like, hey, we know about this. We don't know the impact yet.
Exactly.
totally candid about that is huge. And then saying, obviously, like, we're going to look into it. We're evaluating these products that we think might have it. And then those iterative updates are huge to say, we found this in the manage on-prem. Here's how you disable it for now until we can get it patched.
Yep.
Like, these things are huge.
But
I'll make an analogy.
That's awesome. That's like what you expect as a security professional, isn't it? Like, just tell me what's going on, because nothing's worse than not knowing.
Well, I like to make an analogy, right, Ryan, to take off your point. So what I like to do is say, how can I make this message convey to more people in life, right? That's kind of my mission. So I'm going to give you two stories. Ryan Cromar, your mom is passing away unexpectedly. She's in the hospital. They are working on her in intensive care, and you cannot go back. You're sitting in the waiting room. It starts at 6 a.m. First story, you get an update every 35 minutes. Nurse comes out and says she's still kicking. Doc's still working on it. We just want to let you know, hey, we just want to keep you. The other one is you don't hear anything until tomorrow at 6 a.m. that she passed away. How do you feel?
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Even if they both come out with the same outcome, even if it comes to the same damn outcome, which one would you rather have? No data?
First,
data.
100%. You want to know, like, keep me informed, right?
It's
like,
Schrodinger's body right now, right?
Yeah.
Like,
right.
Yeah, so I just, sorry, a little bit, little off color. But
and also, I feel like we need to do an internal shout out too, right? Our internal SecOps team was on this as well, and they saw it very quick.
They actually may have beat our SOC as a service team to the punch. Like they already had it into internal. You know, I go to poke around after I get my coffee, and you know, it's not my responsibility to be directly on those things, right? I like to keep a nose out, but when I reached out, you know, the teams had already been on it. And so they were already starting to investigate impact. You know, the only thing I would say is that I'd love a more cadenced response, right, out of our teams outwardly. But other than that, they were on it. I mean, it was amazing for me to see that team rush to, are we using this? Where are we using this? What is the impact? Can we investigate the prior impact? Can we close the impact right now? What's our production schedule to get this out to our test environments? Like, that was all before my coffee got cold, right? Like, that was, you know, so I mean, it was great. You know, I like to see it. So I agree with your shout out there. You know, I can be critical as well. So this one's amazing to me.
And like I reshared your post, you know, our SecOps team is really good, and also our engineering team is really good. They're really receptive to that.
True story.
Definitely organizations where SecOps or cyber, whatever your team name is, and dev doesn't get along, right? Because security slows shit down, right? But they did a fantastic
security's
job.
a business enabler, damn it. I'll argue that till
I agree. Hey man, I agree. But like a lot of boardrooms don't see it that way, right? But it was really cool to see us. It was really cool to see ConnectWise leaping into action here. And I'm sure some others have, we just haven't seen it, right? But that's huge. You need to understand that this is a vulnerability at the root of whoever wrote whatever application you're using, right? It's like me pulling in a node module for my web app, and then that node module is like, I have to wait for log4j to get updated. I have to test that in my code base. I have to make sure everything works. I probably need
comms in the rest of the world, actually. So let's do this. Let's analyze a little more than just the us's and the ConnectWises. If you watch the story, so starting around 7:30 or so Mountain Time, I started getting some of the information about this when I started reading about it. This was Friday morning, but the industry came out with, like, I think there were 3 or 4 different GitHub repos that came out that instantly were looking for those vulnerabilities from the outside world and testing them in your architecture. Like, you had proof of concept code happening by Friday mid-morning, by 10 a.m. I think John Hammond and his team put out like 5 different videos on ways to do it in like 70 minutes, right?
And they put out that testing tool too.
Oh yeah, brilliant. I mean, so the transparency is there, and I like that. But in addition to that, you're starting to see muscle fibers. Right? Like, you watch somebody in the gym pick up that first awkward weight, or I akin it to my wife getting on her first bicycle. Like, it looked retarded. I don't mean to say that negatively. It looked horrible, let's say, right? I try to, words matter, right? So I'm trying to be careful about that. But, the point is, my wife got on that bike. It looked really bad. And then as she got more stable and she understood it and she did it, she got really good. And so what I mean by that is that's those muscle fibers starting to fire, right? You start getting good at this. You're starting feeling comfortable. You don't look awkward anymore. I'm starting to see a security industry at our scale, at SMB scale, at our MSP level, architect and deliver solutions, capabilities, understanding, education, noise at such a pace. Like, my security heart is extremely happy over this incident just because of how quickly everyone had tools. And what I mean by that is, it might have just been a web firewall rule. right?
Right.
I had a friend of mine, Philip, said his, FortiGate almost instantly was finding it in IPS.
Right.
Right. And so, I had another friend say, hey, listen, I found it in my this. And I had another friend say, I found it in my Ubiquity controller. Yeah. If you guys hadn't thought about your Ubiquity controllers you're hosting in DigitalOcean, like legit, you need to deal with these. Like they're seriously getting pwned
they
right
are
now.
vulnerable.
So the point is, I think what we're getting at is I'm starting to see the signs of life of an operational capacitance inside our industry that is more than just nascent.
We're
and I'm
working
excited by
together,
it.
right?
Yeah.
And that's huge, because that's what I love about channel is, even if we're competitors, like we work with each other, and we're really seeing that shine through into cyber.
Yep.
And that's really where we need to go. So it definitely makes me feel like we have more of a chance in the future, right? But Matt, good point. I wanted to make sure we called that out. Unifi controller is vulnerable. I tested one. It is vulnerable. Using Huntress's really cool tool.
Yep.
Shout out to Jason Slagle also for helping with that.
I was super happy mine was locked down to a particular subnet on a Cloudflare edge, right? Like,
right.
So
yeah,
I didn't have as many.
Very easy to action. You just send a request in Postman and ping. So, yeah, good job. It looks like John.
John Haas, all patched and updated. Not a buddy.
I love it.
Yeah, awesome.
So awesome. But and that's a huge what should I say? Testimonial for things like WAF, right? So we had my MSP, we had a sizable Unifi controller, but the web interface was behind Nginx, right? Because we could use rules in Nginx. So if I couldn't update right away, like, because updating that controller can cause issues. I could have gone in Nginx.
Lyle in the chat said, "Hey Matt, say again about the Unifi controller vulnerability." So your Unifi controllers run Java. And they also run there's Jason Slagle. Nice. So yeah, what I mean by that is that, go make sure you're updating those packages and the requests on that. They were vulnerable to this attack is the point, Lyle. So if they're publicly exposed, it's super easy.
It's very easy. Took me 2 seconds. Like
we actually have some celebrity here there because Jason was part of that transparency and build, and actually I would say more than just muscle firing. This guy's like Arnold Schwarzenegger in the 80s at this point. So just to understand, if I was talking about security muscles, Jason's that guy. But they helped build that testing tool together with Huntress, and how quickly that was just given out to the public. And shout out to Huntress specifically. They are one of those companies that is always understood raising the tide before I ever understood there was water. So yeah, fantastic. They did a great job on that.
Yeah, for sure. So I want to break out of the channel for a minute. So there's this application called Infinite Campus that virtually every school here in Colorado runs on every school district, and a lot in they're a big company, right? Student information system. But the school district my kiddos go to sent out they have that automated phone thing and said, hey, check your email. Checked my email and said, hey, you can't get into parent portal. You can't get into like the fee pay thingy or the lunch thingy or like any of that. And even their enrollment system, like starting today, actually, I'm supposed to like re-enroll the kids for next year. They had to take that down because Infinite Campus itself is written on Java, right? It's a Tomcat based application. And they said, hey, this happened, right? There's this going on. And obviously they like explained it in layman's terms and said, there's a vulnerability happening. So we're going to do this. And they said, we're pulling down Infinite Campus. We're pulling down it's Infinite Campus, Jason. We're pulling down Infinite Campus. We're pulling down like the fee thingy and the enroll thingy. They all have, schools. They write these crazy custom apps. And the fact that they did that's got to be a tough decision, right? The student information system is central to how schools function. Right?
If you calculated that by PII times count times fine, I would imagine it probably becomes quite an easy decision. As a matter of fact,
probably, especially this is the biggest school district in the state. It's like a couple 100,000 students, but the fact that they very quickly there's probably a war room roundtable, and they said, all right, guys, we don't know the impact. They're probably on the phone with all the vendors, and their decision was like, hey, we just got to pull this down and we got to deal with it. And that's it's a ballsy decision, right? It's a tough decision to make, but they did it. And I'm really happy about that. Right. I am. As someone whose kids go there, I'm really happy that they made a decision to protect the information. Oh, that's a good point. Blackboard is huge.
Oh, I used to have Blackboard nightmares. Oh my God. That's a very good point, though. I mean, a lot of universities are having a bad day.
No. I'll say this right now. No, they're not. No, I have a real beef with the universities. And I'll say this myself personally, because I've notified 4 of them that their infrastructure was attacking me at Iconic. And of the responses, there's only one that I'll give a positive shout out to, was Purdue. They're the only one that actually even got back to me and dealt with it. But I have a university somewhere in California that one of their physics department is still emailing an account and is still compromised. And so I would wager that the Blackboard systems inside those universities don't have anyone more than a student person responsible for dealing with it through some outsourced contractor. And unless the contractor is that good at it, they're not going to deal with this. Even if Blackboard fixed it. And I might be wrong on their update process, and I could be ignorant there. But no, the universities don't have the operational capability to fix most of this ever, it seems.
Right.
We were talking about this before the stream about Infinite Campus going down. You think about timing-wise, right? You've got a lot of kids transferring in for the new semester, parents wanting to know grades to see, did little Jimmy get straight A's? Does he deserve that? Does he deserve
this
that
time of year.
Switch? You know, do I buy the Xbox or is he getting a lump of coal based on the grades? We don't even know.
Yeah.
I said it's a great time to be a kid. Perfect timing to manipulate the system.
Boy, I would have been logging the hell out of some log4j as quickly as possible. See if I can make them grades all A's. Son.
Right.
Give me a minute on that database. I'm going to do some select and replaces.
Practice on Minecraft, see how that goes.
Yeah.
To Infinite
Escalate
Campus.
Quickly. Oh, it's so
and
good.
You know what'll probably happen is they'll probably create, you can access this from the school's network so that teachers and stuff can continue to function. But it was a really cool decision. So I'm happy about that. And I'm going to reach out to Jeffco schools and see if they'd be willing to chat with us about that decision. Because I would love to hear how that went down at a high level, because I want to see how the decision tree happened, right?
But going back to what Matt was talking about earlier, right? Would you rather hear, hey, this happened, we did this because X, Y, and Z, or 6 months from now, hey, we did nothing, and your child's information is out in the wild, whenever little Jimmy went to the doctor, whatever his grades are, whatever his SSM is, all these things, they're just gone. And I'd rather know.
Yeah, they made the right choice for sure.
I do have a call to action. So I came loaded for bear on this. So MSPs that are listening to this, I would say this is a perfect time for a tabletop exercise. This is a perfect time to go look at each of your very vulnerable and vital applications you run, whatever they may be. Start looking at what their response was from that company. Start digging into what you think you can determine about from your own tool set, right? If you run those servers yourself, if you host them, like the manage advice. See if you have your SOC as a service and your ED and your SIM and your EDR SIEM. People bust my chops all the time about that, but whatever, I call it SIM. So, if you have the abilities to look back in history and say, did anybody inject something that matches this syntax, right? And if you can't do that, take that as a sign that you need to increase you need to increase your capabilities. Yes, that's touche. It's true. Like, I'm wrapping the beard in some tinfoil, no doubt. So, I just don't want it to catch on fire. The skin will heal. No, but seriously, go see what your assessment capabilities are. See what what existed in your world. What was touched? What wasn't? What was the vendor's response? How did they talk about it? Did they do any investigation? Do they have anything they can say about it? Right? And just assess, and then look at that and say, okay, now, what should I change? And that's defensibility, documenting that iteration, documenting that assessment, that change, that delta, that understanding. Yeah, look for at least 60 days. You're right. Eric said this morning, 60 days. I think the feds have said that it's been at least 2 weeks now that there's been enumeration of this between security trails. And I think somebody correct me in the audience who the other one, I think it was Cisco. But, I actually did a Shodan search of some of those things, and just looking for was very publicly what had log4j was very quick to enumerate, right? And so I have to imagine as soon as that hit, it was off to the races. But I bet there was some experimentation with this from the players. And if you look, I think, wasn't it Alibaba Cloud that confirmed it first? Well, do we have any conjecture that the new policies in China, where vulnerabilities must be disclosed to the Chinese government before they can be disclosed to the vulnerable parties? Was there not some massive nation state enumeration of this? And I think only time will tell as we dig back through the logs. But my call to action is find out what kind of logs you have as an MSP and see if
that goes over, any vulnerability. Like when proxy shell dropped, our call to action was obviously patch, but it's also, hey, look for the IOCs for proxy shell. You need to look for the IOCs for log4shell, or for any vulnerability that you get wind of that you action, right? Because there's always a chance it's exploited. And the first thing I'm going to do when I use a widely publicized thing like log4shell is I'm going to put a less publicized thing in there so that when you patch it, I can continue to do my thing, right? So that's an important
Yeah. Let's not skip the
part of the
maturity of these
process.
threat actors, right? Like you
Right.
definitely could say, the same sleight of hand capabilities that exist. Look at this, look at this, look at this. And oh, by the way, this last open source update I just did and got through, like it was also containing new vulnerabilities or something, right? So you could see, and I'm not a code developer, but I would say that the capabilities of these threat actors are getting higher and higher for sure.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And that's why, we have conversations about WAF and edge and things like that, because we want to have more levels of Swiss cheese, right? Like the more I could put in between you and my server, the better.
Yeah.
And it's also why, since the beginning of time, we've used DMZs and things, because it's part of that overall architecture. If we're going to expose something to the public, is going to get pwned eventually. Right?
I still chuckle every
pwn
time
the
I read that
edge.
everything's on fire. Sorry, I got distracted. I love it. Yeah, but filtering requests and only allowing things that were meant for your database from the outside on your WAF, right? Things that help drive some of those things, like, why would we have this in there, right? This shouldn't be allowed through the WAF in the first place. But yeah,
and also just understanding like what you would expect in your environment. Eric, our friend Eric Bowles, we were chatting, and he said he once did a pen test on this website. It was a PHP based website with a PHP based form, and said, "Oh, you're not going to get through it." He just dropped 128 megs of raw data into the form and
just
crashed
buffer
PHP
overflowed
because it couldn't handle that much of a post request. I was like, man, that is one setting in the PHP INI. Like that's it to stop that from happening. Like nobody should be sending 128 meg post payloads to your servers. That is not a valid thing. I just shot the link over to Jason. We'll see if he can jump in here.
Oh, that's awesome.
But yeah,
he's a smart guy. He'd be able to talk about this a lot more intelligently than me.
Yeah, he speaks a lot more APIs and code than we do.
But this is to talk about the iterativeness though of this and what's going to come. Now you're going to have contextual API attacks. Look at the work Alyssa Knight's doing.
Right.
On the Fire HP or the Fire IP APIs, some of the banking APIs. Basically, just saying like it won't just be these vulnerabilities. You'll start finding things where in these segmented processes where I can escape this because of some nomenclatural problem and insert into this other API because of the trusted nature, right? And now I can get access I shouldn't have. And so now they're saying now your APIs have to be inspected in between your internal processes and look for contextual awareness of what should be being passed over to that, right? Like, I mean, the just to point out that this is going to continue to iterate and we're going to have to find more and more capability, which brings me back to why I'm so happy I'm starting to see the muscles flex right on some of these vendors and some of these partners. So that's fantastic.
Well, and we've seen so much. Yeah, Lyle, that's a really good call out. So yeah, their controller software does use log4j. I think pretty much anything written in Java has log4j somewhere in there, right? Like, and yeah, they have released a patch, which is awesome. That's very quick on Ubiquity's part. So props to them, and just make sure you get that deployed because
and we're at what rating. We're at 72 hours from notification, like something like that. Like that's amazing. Yeah. I mean, right? Like let's just be honest. This is showing those kind of breaths of life, right? All right, Jason Slagle. I'll just shut up now. I'm good. What's up, buddy?
Yeah, how you doing?
We brought the smart people on now. I can just look pretty.
I need all the coffee here because I don't think I've slept enough in the past couple of days. So
imagine not.
I mean,
yeah. I'll ask you this question, Jason. Did you find anything where you would have to improve your gathering capabilities as a result of this?
Yeah, I mean, so for sure, right? Like, so I was just talking to a bunch of people about this morning, right? Everyone's like SBOM, SBOM, right? And it's like, it's really hard as a consumer, right? It's easy if I build the software because like all of my tools have things that can pull dependencies in, right? But it's like you run some, we'll pick on Java because that's what we're talking about now. You run some like Spring Boot fat jar app, like, and you don't even know what's bundled into it, right? And it's like, even we have a small 13,000 line app we have for a client. It's Java. It pulls like 97 dependencies in because it's Spring Boot, right? Like it's like crazy. Right. So how do you manage that if it's just built as a jar? You don't. And I mean, that exists for every language, right? It's like these are supply chain third-party attacks, right? Like we've seen that with Node, but you can get a .NET app with an exe that's got a bunch of like DLLs and stuff shipped into it, right? Like how do you, as a consumer, determine what the dependencies of your vendor's dependencies are?
And that goes back to the software bill of goods, right? Like this is kind of what, James Azar started this. I don't want to steal it from him, but this argument that a software bill of goods should exist that says, hey, if I'm a vendor consuming another product, I have to have a software bill of goods that rolls up, right? If I'm going to put pepper in my soup, I need to put pepper on the damn ingredient label. It's like, I think that's where we need to head as far as this goes, in my opinion. But, it's just...
The problem is they'll list Elasticsearch is an ingredient, right? But Elasticsearch itself has 10 ingredients,
15
one of which
different
is
things.
Lucene, which has 30 ingredients, right? So it's
That's why it has to be uniform, right? I think that's why this has to be some legislative aspect in this regard. But or something. I don't know what the something is. But
well, even like if you look at the MIT license or some of these other open source licenses, you're supposed to list, you're supposed to give credit to whatever modules you pull in. Right. And somewhere in there I should be able to find, you use this and that and whatever packages. But like you said, now I got to go to all those packages and look at their license statement to see what they use. Like, who has time to do that? Like, that's going to be tough.
Yeah, I was actually noodling around this morning. It's like, man, you could build a product that, right? Like basically,
hey, wait, don't say that live.
Yeah, I know. I'm not. I don't have the will in me to do that, right? But that basically maintained hashes of all the libraries and crap, right? And would just scan the software and match hashes, then kick to a human ones it doesn't know, so that they could look them up, right? Like I feel like VirusTotal could probably do this, or some other like service that already hashes stuff.
Right. Yeah, I'll link it up to GitHub and check versions and things. That would be really, really powerful. Because it's those dependencies that get you. And even like applications I've written, right? I've updated the application and pushed it and completely forgot to like NPM update it or whatever, right? Like, because I just forget.
Not to mention like 7 NPM modules that have been compromised this year that have been consumed by millions and millions of humans. But I mean, same concept.
React Up brings in like 400 node modules, right? Like, how do you even deal with that?
Yeah, it's tough. I think, though, it is really what I'm calling to action is the vulnerabilities are going to come. They're going to be faster. They're going to be in things that we wouldn't expect. They're going to win. It's more about, can you figure out what happened, right? Can you determine the breadth of it? Can you determine what your impact was? Can you actually adequately report to your constituency as to whether or not they've been impacted, right? Jason, the reason you did most of what you did this weekend is to be able to answer to your clients, are you impacted? As this starts hitting the news, right? And that's because you have this strong drive to actually operationalize security. A lot of MSPs are probably not even thinking about this. Like, I'll be honest, I think there's still a large swath in the bell curve of MSPs that go, yep, I'm sure everything's fine.
Yeah, so I did it for a couple of big customers we had to help them out and just to generally help. For the MSP clients, I had my guys working on it, right? And there's a lot of line of business that has this in it. And like printers, right? Like it's
there
are for sure vulnerable printers because that's what we need. More vulnerabilities for print right now.
Print nightmare, print dream. We'll call it something. But
this is why we put printers on a VLAN. All right, like only let printing protocols.
But then I can't print from my iPhone because I'm not on the same layer 2 discovery.
So I'm just kidding. I mean, I think the single biggest thing that this exposes to me, like limit outbound network access, right? So it's like printers have no reason to talk to the internet, right? So like while they may be vulnerable. You make it a lot harder if the attacker has to run LDAP on port 443.
Yeah, they can't go reach the LDAP server. Yeah. Right. Yeah, exactly. That's very prescriptive, Jason. I want to make sure and reiterate that, right? Like, if you have no need to reach out to LDAP external to your network, if you had simply had a policy that says we're not allowing LDAP lookups externally, you're done, right? The kill chain in this is tied to that LDAP request.
That kills the RCE. It doesn't kill the problem because there's also the DNS module, so I can leak environment variables and read files from the file system and a bunch of other crap, right? So that's not a silver bullet because you can't block DNS in most cases, but it's better.
It is
It's
better.
something, right? Like back
Yeah.
when, remember, I think it was CISA that did this. They did a whole thing on the nuclear industry was getting attacked by a shortcut that was deployed to the desktop, and the icon was referencing an SMB connection on out to the WAN, and it was a pass the hash. Why is SMB let out of the LAN? In what circumstance do you need SMB over the WAN?
I think my local
none.
cable company blocks it. I mean, come on now.
Yeah. I did want to call out Paul here. This is a really good comment, but I think the important thing to add context of this is that we're seeing so many more MSPs come to us, pay attention to content creators like Jason, and really listen to what people are saying and try to learn and get better. So yeah, I think the understanding of SecOps and cybersecurity in the MSP space is lacking, but I do see it getting better, and I hope that continues and snowballs as we go down the line.
It has to, or the government will force it.
Right. And horribly, right? And really poorly.
It'll suck. It'll be painful.
They won't get it right, and it'll just be bad for everybody.
Well, and I think setting a standard for us, I mean, my pitch and my mission is all around CIS. And it's not that CIS is the greatest thing in the world. It's simply because it is a very prescriptive framework that I can ask people to set a bar on. And as you answer those questions, like, Jason, if I ask you, do you have MFA on? And the answer is a yes, no. I know you. Your answer is yes, no, no, yes, 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 no, yes, no, 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 yes, 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 no, yes, no, no, yes. Right? Because as you zoom in, it's which projects can I use SSO? Which ones can I bring in conditional accesses? Which ones can I afford to pay the SSO tax? Which one? And so, like, we often summarize so much in our industry, and we're going to start seeing that maturation is going to actually drive change in a lot of these ways, right? In a lot of these things. But yeah, I hope it really does snowball. Is my short version of that. Printer's never working, anyways.
Paul and Derek,
he's 100% right.
About insurance. They're already doing it. We've seen the new questions. I've been gathering them. By the way, anybody watching, if you have a fresh cyber insurance questionnaire,
we're still wanting them.
Sanitize it and send it over because we're researching those. But anyways, we're seeing so much.
I'll ping you, Matt.
Yeah,
I can get you a bunch.
That's sweet.
Nice.
Yeah, we got 5 right now, and I don't know if you guys saw our video Dom and I did on this, but insurance companies are struggling with not only actuarial problems, but the actuarial data they do have is horse crap because there's no barrier to entry to be met.
Lies,
right? I could be really bad at my job and deploy MFA, and if I didn't deploy it right, if I don't have the right constraints in place, I didn't remove the local accounts, I didn't do the blah blah blah, still screwed, right?
Or you do SSO, but you use the Microsoft default policy with an OCA, so now it's just workstation takeover gets you into the entire world.
Yep.
Right.
Exactly. And you can take those tokens and walk away with them. So, what we're doing, Paul, is Paul said he wants to see those questionnaires. What we're doing is we're going to compile it and look at it in retrospect to what CIS covers of those questions as well, and also what kind of education content is potentially missing for people. I just pulled my ears out so you guys can hear me, but I can't hear you. Okay, I'm back. I caught my hands on my cable. It's not good.
Too much hand talk.
Too much hand talk.
Oh man, yeah, and I don't know. I think this is a real wake up call though. Like I think we've seen other vulnerabilities. Proxy shell is the one I like to fall back on because if I'm being honest, the reaction to that kind of sucked, right? Like it was. I got so many, hey, I can't patch right now because it's tax season or whatever. It was like, no, that's not an option. Like
somebody asked about Sentinel-1 specifically. I wanted to hit real quick, and I'm pulling a chance.
There he is.
Yeah. He said, do they have the ability? If you're using deep visibility, you should be able to search for those syntaxes if you write the right rules. Their language is sometimes tough, but you should be able to search in deep viz for any commands that were passed on a local device that had that agent on it, I suppose. Anybody disagree with that thought?
But also, I would say
it's hard. WAF bypass. Everyone's got these IDS rules, and I can bypass almost all of them.
Okay.
Right.
So in its perfect state without a commensurate threat actor, yes.
Yeah. Right.
If you have a good threat actor,
kitties.
they could bypass that. Yeah. So touche. It depends is the fair answer to that, right? So
I think the answer is patch it, right? Like you can absolutely, I think you can use WAF for a minute or something to that effect because you need to wait until after. Like a bank is a great example of this. You can't just shut down in the middle of a financial day, right? So use a WAF, use some other edge tool for the day. You're going to stop the script kiddies. But as soon as you can patch.
But Jason makes a good point. I just germinated on that a second in my head. Like, so if you're bypassing that security tool, I think it comes into that layers of how you're logging, right? I think it
Right.
comes into not gathering the firewall logs too, gathering the logs from the endpoint too, gathering the commands put raw into the web server, gathering the right. And I think that's kind of part of the maturity that you bring, and a lot of people in the industry, right, that have done this, that my Sentinel-1 might be bypassed. And if so, then I need to have other methodologies to actually see that information crafted in a way that I can say, yes, I was impacted, or no, I wasn't. And that no evidence of something might not mean evidence of nothing. Right. So, yeah, great.
No
point,
news
Jason.
is not always good news.
And just turn logging off everywhere, and then it's not a problem.
Actually, in this case, the irony is, if we weren't logging everything, this wouldn't be a problem.
Yeah, because I confirmed that if you are not at a log level that actually writes, it does not execute, right? So I wrote a test app, and like,
that's awesome.
If I did it at trace, it didn't trigger. If I did it at error, it did. So
that's
interesting.
To dumb that down, it's essentially like if you're just letting it flow by but not actually recording it, right? It's not going to do anything. But if you're actually doing the diligence aspect of writing it and writing
the
it
important
to
part,
and storing
right?
it and making it something that now it's going to execute. No, is that correct? Is that
fair? Well, because the attack surface would be way bigger if it would work everywhere, right? Because like a lot of these libraries log literally everything if you put them in trace, right? Like, so, I
see. That's awesome. Yeah, I do want to say that, to bring this all the way back to the beginning, because it's probably time for us to wrap up, is really just, if we look at this exercise, it's a really good example of a lot of vendors, a lot of partners, a lot of people having muscle that we haven't seen flexed at this speed, right? We're only 72 hours into this. We had a Ubiquity patch in 4 hours. We have, ConnectWise with great communications. We have Huntress deploying some amazing work on the information over and over again over the 2 days, 3 days, right? And Jason, you were a part of some of that. And I even saw this morning, John Hammond wrote a Try Hack Me room for people to go play around with this and see how bad it is. Like, right? Like, it blows my mind at the speed in which we're increasing our capabilities in the MSP space. And I just love seeing it. So, thoughts? Anybody, gentlemen, Jason, any differing or agreeing thoughts on that matter?
It's fine. We need a centralized place, and I'm trying to push it to be the ISAO, but we need a centralized place to track this stuff for things channel people care about, because information is everywhere, and finding it, it's pinning you to the wall with a fire hose. It's bad. Like, I haven't done any real work since Friday morning because of this.
As we hold you into this conversation today to ponder upon it.
But I appreciate you coming. It's a really good perspective. It was hugely helpful. I put a message here. Don't forget to patch your Unifi controllers. That's probably,
Please.
I think a lot of people watching probably have one of those
firewalls
sitting up on DigitalOcean. Firewalls, patch everything, obviously, but I think I would imagine there's plenty of script kiddies just looping through Unifi controllers.
I have a fun one. So Ghidra is vulnerable, right? So all of my exploit bins are going to pop her shells on the exploiter machines from now on. So, or the threat researchers machines.
That is awesome. Oh, that's so good. Yeah. Oh, sorry, that's delicious. All right, Cromar, you got anything to close us out with normal people talk?
I love it. Actually, I think yes, this is being recorded for Mr. Brett Mesh asking in the chat here. So definitely come check this out. I love talking to you guys, man. I just feel like I learned so much, but I have no idea what you're talking about half the time. So it's fantastic. But
I don't either.
Stuff, guys. This is, I mean, I think if anything, for the layman's, go be proactive, right? Like, go be proactive about what the hell you're doing. Like, if nothing else, over the last few weeks, that's what I've learned from you guys. So yeah. And I'm sorry, Jason, you did have to spend all weekend working on this crap, man.
I spent enough time with my wife, right? So it was good. She hasn't divorced me yet, so we're still okay.
I'll tell you, that's worse than like getting those messages on like a Friday or Saturday, and then you see Matt on there, and he's commenting on every social channel we have, or getting the word out there, and little breath of fresh air. So thank you, man. The transparency thing, I think, is key. I think we got to talk.
I love you too, babe. I just wanted to make sure you knew I love my wife as well, and she's an amazing person for letting me do those things all day, every day.
Yeah, I think the Huntress tool dropped at like 12:36 a.m. Saturday morning, right? And like,
dude, it was so cool
working on it most of the day. Caleb did almost all the work on it. I pointed him in the right direction and paired with him a bit, but that guy is a rock star.
Dude, they're so amazing.
I used it. It works great. I tested it on a Unifi controller. It's a really cool tool.
Yeah.
Well,
and
thanks
you guys are
everyone for
tracking
coming.
the data on those domains, right? Like in that part of this, you're going to get some large. No, okay.
No, it's
in the-
it goes into a Redis cache and it expires in 30 minutes. They explicitly, and I agree, do not want the data.
Right.
Yeah. I can
Yeah, I
see
saw
that.
the Redis stuff on GitHub.
Yeah.
It's like, all right, they're actually not storing it. That's cool. Awesome. Well, we don't want to yap everyone's head off all day. Jason, thanks for jumping in here impromptu. Really appreciate it.
Yeah.
Thanks everyone for joining. Thanks for all the great engagement. And we will talk to you when the next Calamity drops, and I'm sure it won't be long.
Hey,
Won't be
Matt, check the vendor Slack.
Okay. Are they talking about me in there?
I'm talking to you in there.
Oh, okay. I'll hit
Okay.
it. That's
Cool.
again back to your no single source of location, right? Like look at location number 9, please, Matt.
Yeah,
Okay,
I'm
got
like,
it.
do I DM you on LinkedIn? I'll just DM you in Slack. It's
Yeah.
easier.
Sounds good. See
Okay.
y'all.
Cool.
Thanks
Yeah.
All right,
everyone.
buddy.
See ya.
Thank you.
Bye.